The chosen one will target your innocent family when they can't stop you, when they cannot silence you, when they cannot destroy you. They will turn their eyes on your family because they are helpless in the face of your power. As your steps shake the earth, as your voice echoes, they are terrified. When they cannot overthrow you directly, they will target the most sacred, your favorite. But know that this is their last resort, their last struggle. They are afraid because you did not retreat. You got up when you fell. You spoke louder when you wanted to be silenced. They thought you were alone, but they do not know that there is a power behind you, an unshakable will, a holy destiny. This is a warning. Be ready, because no matter how hard they try, they will not be able to stop you. You are chosen, born to walk this path. Write 77 in the comments. And remember, true power does not bow to threats. The world you thought you knew collapsed the moment the messages started pouring in. Twisted narratives, reckless distortions of truth, a wildfire of deception, ignited by those who feared the weight of your voice. Everything you had built, years of sincerity, trust, and loyalty, was unraveled in an instant by those who once sat at your table. While you reeled from the betrayal, they sharpened their words into weapons, rewriting the script to suit their fears. But truth is not a shadow to be erased. It lingers, waiting for the moment light exposes every deception. And now, one by one, the falsehoods unravel as those with the courage to speak emerge, carrying undeniable proof in their hands. The moment you challenged the silence, they marked you, not with open threats, but with the heavy weight of their dismissal, with doors that quietly locked before you reached them, with carefully placed barriers that tested your will. They did not need to strike. They only needed you to question your own strength, to make you believe that resistance was futile. But they underestimated the force that rises not from permission, but from unshaken conviction. Every attempt to diminish you became another brick in the foundation of your endurance. Every lie they spun only revealed their own desperation. When their veiled manipulations failed, they shifted their game, not to remove you, but to make you doubt you had ever stood. They came not with open warfare, but with quiet poison, honeyed words wrapped around hidden daggers, whispers of surrender dressed as wisdom. Many before you had been deceived, lured into submission by illusions of peace. But you did not fall into the snare. You saw the fractures they desperately tried to conceal, the unease in their eyes as they recognized a force beyond their control. Their error was never in attempting to suppress you. It was in underestimating the inevitability of your rise. You never sought their validation. You never needed their permission. Like a mountain that refuses to bow to the storm, you stood unmoved while the winds of their deception howled around you. They came with force, with fury, believing they could wear you down like the waves erode the shore. But they did not understand. You were not shaped by their storms, nor built on their foundations. You were anchored in something far greater, something eternal, something they could neither touch nor comprehend. And as their relentless tide crashed against you, they began to see the truth. It was not you who would break, but them. They wanted you to believe in their dominion, to accept their authority as unshakable. They dressed themselves in importance, cloaked themselves in grandeur, but beneath the robes was only dust. They thought their words carried weight, that their judgments could determine your destiny. But now, their voices faltered, no longer commanding, no longer absolute. They spoke, but their words had no power. They moved, but their steps led nowhere. What once seemed immovable was now crumbling beneath the weight of its own falsehood. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. You see, they never expected you to endure. They thought if they struck you hard enough, if they twisted the truth deep enough, you would break. They counted on your exhaustion, your surrender. But what they did not understand is that you were never standing on their strength. You were standing on a foundation that does not shake, a force that does not fade, a truth that does not bend. Their rage was never about what you had done. It was about what they could not do. They could not silence you. They could not stop you. They could not make you bow. Like a flame they tried to smother, you only burned brighter. They threw dirt upon you, believing they were burying you, but they did not realize you were a seed, and the deeper they pushed, the stronger you grew. Now, they look upon you with fear, not because you have harmed them, but because you have risen beyond their control. They wanted you to beg for their mercy, to cower beneath their rule, but instead, you have become what they feared most, a force untethered, a voice that will not be silenced, a presence that cannot be denied. Let them watch, let them whisper, let them wonder how you are still standing. They will search for explanations, for excuses, for ways to make sense of what has happened. But they will find none, because the truth is simple. The truth is clear. You are still here, still rising, still walking the path that was set before you. And no force in this world, no lie, no scheme, no opposition could ever change that. The illusions they crafted, the careful masks, the stolen authority begin to shatter beneath the force of truth. They cast you as reckless, dangerous, a force that must be subdued. But look closely. Does an empire tremble at the arrival of the weak? Does power scheme against insignificance? Number. Their resistance is proof, not of your downfall, but of your magnitude. They push, they claw, they attempt to weave doubt into your certainty, but hesitation belongs to those still waiting for approval, and you are not. Their fear does not belong to you. It is the evidence of your impact. They would not conspire in the dark if you were insignificant. They would not work tirelessly to erase you if they did not recognize, deep in their marrow, that you possess the power to unmake everything they have built. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them beg the tides to turn in their favor. The moment they feared has already arrived. Their dread is not your burden. It is your coronation. What they held was never true power, but a mirage sustained by secrecy, by borrowed strength, by the fragile belief that no one would dare to see beyond the illusion. But you did. You saw the cracks before they knew they were breaking. And now, truth moves like an unseen force through the structures they swore were unshakable. Their words unravel, their lies recoil upon them, and the authority they clung to crumbles beneath their own weight. You need no weapon, no vengeance. Their undoing was always in their own hands. The forces that sought to erase you, to smother your voice beneath layers of deception, were never as powerful as they believed. Their undoing was not crafted by your hands, but by the weight of their own arrogance. Truth is not a force that bends to manipulation, nor can it be buried beneath falsehoods. It rises unshaken, as do you. Their strikes were precise, designed to dismantle and silence, but they failed to grasp the ripple effect of their own aggression. Every attempt to diminish you sent tremors through the unseen fabric of consciousness, awakening those who had been blind to the pattern. What they inflicted upon you did not end with you. It echoed, a tidal force shifting the very foundation they sought to protect. The world is no longer indifferent. Your defiance, once dismissed as an isolated act, now reflects in countless eyes. In their desperation to break you, they shattered the illusion that kept others complacent. The suffering they inflicted has become a catalyst, a disruption they cannot control. History does not forget those who endure the storm, nor does it erase the ones who refuse to kneel. The wounds of those who stood before were meant to silence, yet their pain became the ink that rewrote history. What was meant to extinguish them instead became a guide, illuminating the way forward for those who would come next. They believe they are silencing dissent, but in reality, they are forging a legacy they can no longer contain. The attempt to erase is what inscribes a name into the hearts of many. When you remain unshaken, you offer others permission to do the same. Strength is contagious. Defiance breeds defiance. A single voice, when not silenced, becomes an anthem. They sought to quiet you, yet every word they used against you only expanded the reach of your truth. What was meant to be an ending is nothing more than the spark of something greater. This was never about mere resistance, it was about transformation. Your presence, your survival, is not a mere act of defiance. It is a force, a shifting current that does not bow to fear. They misunderstand the nature of power, believing it can only be wielded through control. But the truth is sharper than they could ever imagine. Every attempt to diminish you has only refined the fire within you, tempering it into something unbreakable. The force they sought to suppress has only gained momentum, and now it moves beyond even their reach. They will attempt to reduce you, to distort your purpose, to laugh as though ridicule is enough to break you. But their laughter is nothing more than a hollow defense against what they already fear. Their hostility is a silent confession of your strength. The current of time bends toward truth, and no force, no matter how brutal, has ever been enough to stop its course. Those who once mocked the ones who stood against them soon found their own voices fading. Their scorn turned to dust. There is no need to chase them, no need to meet their force with force. They thrive on reaction, on chaos, on the illusion that they still hold dominion over your path. But silence dismantles what noise cannot. A fire denied its fuel does not rage, it withers. They were prepared for war, for struggle, for endless cycles of conflict. What they were not prepared for was irrelevance, to be ignored, to be nothing in the eyes of the one they sought to break. When you refuse to meet them where they stand, they crumble under the weight of their own insignificance. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. They will push harder and harder, searching for the moment your will fractures. They will strike at every fault line, hoping to find the weakness that does not exist. But presence alone is enough to dismantle the illusion. True power does not require spectacle. Those who truly hold it have no need for validation. The ones who are bound by it do not waste their breath on the ones who beg to be acknowledged. And when they reach, grasping for the response that will sustain them, they will find only silence reflecting back at them. This was never about following the path set before you. It was about dismantling, reshaping, and creating something new. Every challenge was not an obstacle, but a sharpening force. The ones who sought to diminish you only ensured that you emerged honed, refined, unstoppable. The suffering they placed upon you did not destroy you. It became the very foundation upon which something unshakable was built. They spent their strength trying to restrain the inevitable, fighting against the truth that could not be chained. But the battle was never theirs to win. You stand, unwavering, at the precipice of change, not as the product of what they built, but as the force that will shape what comes next. This is the moment. The deception has been seen, the illusion shattered. Now the world must reckon with the presence that cannot be erased, the voice that will not be silenced. The narrative is no longer theirs to control. The truth has already taken root, and nothing they do can stop it from flourishing. The unraveling began the moment the whispers turned to shouts, screens illuminated with fabrications, conversations tainted with distortions, a relentless tide of deceit designed to erase everything that had been built in honesty. The storm was not born from missteps or misdeeds, but from daring to see and speak where others chose silence. What once felt unshakable, trust, camaraderie, the foundation of relationships nurtured through time, was suddenly exposed as fragile, breaking apart under the weight of manufactured betrayal. The very ones who once walked beside you, who sat at your table and called you ally, now recast you as a villain in the story they hastily assembled. But illusions, no matter how intricately woven, cannot stand against truth when it begins its inevitable rise. Proof lingers in the echoes of digital trails, in the messages that refuse to vanish, in the testimonies of those who witnessed and remember. What was twisted will straighten. What was buried will surface. What they had not accounted for was the endurance of truth. Time does not erase reality. It only grants it the space to be revealed. As the fabrications spread, so did the reckoning. The first fractures were barely noticeable, a few questioning voices, an uncertain glance. But then the veil began to slip, exposing the mechanisms of manipulation. Those who moved in shadows, believing their actions would remain hidden, found themselves ensnared by the very deception they crafted. There are forces in this world that do not forget, that do not overlook or allow imbalance to reign indefinitely. The weight of dishonesty is not easily carried, and sooner or later, it bends even the most stubborn of hands. The mark of defiance. Long before the first act of betrayal, the decision had been made. Before the words were spoken, before the accusations were crafted, the threat was recognized, not in any action taken, but in the presence itself. They saw the force of what could not be tamed, the refusal to be molded into their expectations. They knew control was slipping, that their grip would never hold over one who was never meant to kneel. So they turned to silence, to obstruction, to resistance, not in open declaration, but in the subtle, suffocating weight of exclusion. But every act of suppression only reinforced the will to stand. Every attempt to erase was a confirmation of presence. every shadow cast an affirmation of the light they could not extinguish. When direct attacks failed, the strategy shifted. No longer was the goal to destroy, but to erode, to chip away at certainty, to plant hesitation where there had once been conviction. They came not as enemies, but as gentle voices, offering caution dressed as wisdom, surrender disguised as balance. The battle was no longer external, but internal, fought within the corridors of the mind, where doubt could be a more dangerous weapon than any blade. They sought to convince, to persuade that strength was recklessness, that standing firm was isolation, that submission was wisdom. And yet, the truth stood unshaken. The same lies that had bound so many before found no hold here. The attempts to persuade only confirmed the depth of their fear, the desperation hidden beneath their carefully constructed facade. When the old tactics failed, desperation took hold. The calculated approach gave way to reckless aggression, their attempts at control slipping further with every passing moment. Their narratives wavered, their words lost their weight. They spoke as if they still held dominion, as if their authority remained intact, but the illusion had cracked beyond repair. They had never held the power they believed they wielded. The attempt to write another's story was never theirs to claim, and now, as they watched their own influence fade, they were left grasping at ghosts. Their opposition was not a sign of their strength, but of their own fragility. Their fury was not a response to any wrongdoing, but to the unbearable truth that they had never owned the outcome. Power does not come from spectacle. It does not require noise, nor validation, nor the acknowledgement of those who seek to contain it. It exists regardless of perception. The attempts to provoke, to stir reaction, to bait into conflict, all fail when met with indifference. They had prepared for resistance, for struggle, for endless cycles of combat. What they had not prepared for was irrelevance, to be met not with anger, nor fear, nor even defiance, but with the realization that they no longer mattered, that their presence no longer shaped the course of what was to come. This was never about following, never about accepting the structures built to confine and define. It was always about breaking beyond them, about forging something unrecognizable to those who cling to the past. Every attempt at suppression, every effort to diminish, became the very fuel for transformation. They fought so hard to hold the walls in place, not realizing that the very act of resistance had already ensured their collapse. The path forward is no longer dictated by them. The old order trembles, not because of force, but because of the sheer inevitability of what is rising in its place. The truth they sought to bury now stands taller than ever. It is no longer a whisper, it is a force that cannot be silenced. What they called power was never their own. It was a borrowed illusion, an elaborate construct of deception woven from stolen credibility and fragile masks. They wrapped themselves in falsehood so tightly that even they mistook their fabrications for truth. But the cracks were always there, splintering beneath the weight of their contradictions. They believed their empire untouchable, yet long before they noticed the decay, the foundation had already begun to collapse. And now, as the facade crumbles, they look upon the ruins in disbelief, unable to comprehend that the force they sought to suppress is the very one that stands unmoved, unshaken, unwavering. Erasure was their weapon of choice, silence their most insidious tool. They sought to reduce you to a whisper, to fold you into the shadows of obscurity. But their undoing was never in your hands. It was etched into the arrogance that blinded them. Their strength was not built upon solid ground, but upon fleeting control, upheld only as long as others played their game. What they never accounted for was the resilience of truth. It does not bow, does not shrink, it does not dissolve under pressure. No matter how deeply it is buried, it resurfaces, undaunted, undeniable, unstoppable. With every attack, they exposed their own vulnerability. They sought to diminish, to dismantle, yet every move they made sent ripples beyond their reach. Their hostility did not remain contained. It echoed, spreading far beyond their intended target. Every act of oppression sparked recognition in those who had long remained silent. Every attempt to suppress became an awakening, a shift in consciousness that could not be reversed. What was meant to be destruction became revelation. Their blows did not just fall upon one, they struck chords within many, stirring them from their slumber. History does not belong to those who wielded the whip. It remembers those who refused to be broken beneath it. Time has never favored those who built their dominion upon deceit, nor has it been kind to those who ruled through fear. They saw resistance as defiance, as disorder. But what they failed to grasp was that in attempting to extinguish, they only illuminated the fire they feared. The world is no longer turning away. What was once hidden is now laid bare, and those who once felt powerless now find strength in knowing they were never alone. They believed they were erasing a threat, when in reality, they were immortalizing it. What they tried to erase has become legend. What they attempted to silence has become a movement. Their own hands sealed their fate. For every attempt to stifle only amplified the message they feared the most. The voices they dismissed now resonate louder, bound not by one story, but by many. And so, what was once an attempt at erasure has instead marked the birth of something uncontainable, something destined to reshape what they so desperately tried to preserve. Now is the time to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. You can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord guide your path. This path has been walked before. The names that once faced mockery, that once bore the weight of opposition, are now etched into history as symbols of transformation. The ones who sought to suppress them are but ghosts, their efforts long forgotten, their scorn reduced to whispers, lost to time. The cycle repeats, yet those who attempt to suppress never learn. They mistake their momentary advantage for permanence. But history bends toward those who stood firm. Their resistance is not proof of failure. It is confirmation of alignment with the tides of change. True strength requires no performance. It does not demand validation, nor seek acknowledgement. Those who truly hold it do not chase approval, nor do they lower themselves to battle where battle is unnecessary. And so, when faced with provocation, the greatest response is none at all. They crave reaction. They thrive on chaos. They seek to provoke conflict. But when met with indifference, they crumble beneath the weight of their own irrelevance. What they feared most was not opposition, but the realization that they no longer matter. This was never about conforming. It was never about following roads already paved. It was always about dismantling the structures that served no one but the few who sought control. Every attempt at suppression only ensured that something greater would rise from it. Every effort to hold back change only propelled it forward. They fought so desperately to maintain their illusion, unaware that their struggle was futile from the start. What they feared has already come to pass. The world they sought to shape is no longer theirs. The shift has already begun. The foundation they relied upon no longer holds, and the force they swore could never rise stands before them now, unstoppable, unyielding, rewriting everything they thought was unchangeable.